Hello and welcome to this short video about how to become a successful student. My name is Kyle Bender, Student Counselor at SIIT Prince Albert Campus. Today I'm going to discuss some of the ways you can become a more effective learner and get the most out of your educational experience. The material being covered today is intended for first-year students mostly, or for people who have been out of school for a while, but even experienced students can benefit from reviewing some of the following skills and practices. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we go any further into the material, it's important to review what we consider to be successful practices for students here at SIIT. We really promote finding balance in your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual life in order to support your success here at school. Being a student is more than just studying. We want to ensure that you're getting the most out of your experience and developing all facets of your person in a holistic fashion. We want you to contribute positively to your program by being an active participant within your learning community. So that means being engaged in the material, answering questions when your instructor asks, being active and sharing with your student your experiences. Every student brings with them a lifetime of experience, and sometimes some of the best learning we do as students is learning from others, not just the instructor. So if you don't share, then we don't get a chance to get to know you, and your fellow students will not be able to learn from your experiences as well. It's important that you be engaged in your studies and be prepared to learn. So that means, uh, be committed to learning every day when you're in class, and strive for your personal best. That doesn't necessarily mean you should try and get 100% on everything, but certainly do your best to try and achieve the best results you can. We encourage you to welcome new experiences and access new opportunities while at SIIT. Branch yourself out, get to know new people, that sort of thing. It's important that you be respectful to yourself and your learning space and your learning community. So, always show respect and when dealing with your fellow students and your instructor. And remember to be responsible for your actions. Take responsibility and make sure that you're doing your best to try and succeed in your program. In order to succeed in whatever program you're in, whether it's adult basic education, whether it's business, mental health and wellness, one of our trades programs, no matter the program, if you want to succeed, you need to make school a top priority. Being a student means you have to be ready to make some sacrifices. You can't get through your program without necessarily making school at the top of the priority list, which means you'll have to juggle a lot of different priorities. That can be responsibilities with family or friends or other employment opportunities. Sometimes you have to say no to different things in order to make sure that you're getting, your assignments in on time, you're attending class every day. It can be difficult to say no, certainly, especially if you're somebody who doesn't want to disappoint other people. But while you're in school, you have to make sure that you're putting yourself and your needs definitely in top of your priority list in order to make sure that you get the most out of your educational experience. Being a student means sometimes living on a little less money than some of you are used to. So creating and following a budget can definitely be handy, especially in the first few months of being in school. Making sure that you've got your basic necessities like rent and food and groceries, utilities paid for before some of the nicer things in life is important, just to make sure that you don't end up stressing out about some of those more important things. And when things get difficult, they definitely will. Remember, you're here to achieve your long-term goals, whether it's getting a better job in the future or moving on to further education after SIIT. When things get difficult, keep those long-term goals in mind, and that'll help you get through things and deal with some of the more difficult times. In terms of what happens in class, it's important to take your class time seriously. The first thing we always suggest is to don't show up late. Being late is disrespectful towards the instructor and other students. If you're late and the instructor is teaching their material and you're interrupting them, it can disrupt the class and make other classmates' learning experiences not as meaningful. So show up on time, be ready to learn. This builds good habits for the future. Try and leave your cell phone alone, especially when the instructor is teaching new material. If you're distracted by your phone, you're not going to be getting as much out of the lecture. So definitely there are times when, if you're expecting something important or you have kids who are needing to get in touch with you, maybe turn it to silent or vibrate and otherwise leave your phone alone otherwise. Make sure you're paying attention to the instructor while they're teaching. After all, it's why you're here. And if you do have to miss a class, call in advance, let your instructor know, and get notes from a classmate. That way you won't be falling too far behind and you're able to keep up with the classes because they will definitely be going on whether you're there to attend or not. Over the course of your program, you're going to be learning a lot of new things, and it can be difficult to try and remember everything by the time it gets to the final. So in order to make sure you're prepared for those finals, it's important to make sure you're taking good notes. The first step in note taking is listening and thinking, not necessarily writing. So make sure you're paying attention and capturing the key points. Don't try and write every word down, but maybe just focus on sort of what the key messages are that the instructor is saying. Feel free to leave lots of space between ideas or notes so you can come back and add more later. Sometimes instructors will circle back to ideas and say something that you'll want to jot down. And if you can do so under the salient point, then it'll make it easier to study later. Make sure your handwriting is legible and easy to read. There's no point in writing a bunch of stuff down if it's difficult to read or you don't understand what you've written later on. And make sure that anything the instructor writes on the board or puts up on a PowerPoint that you're taking down in some way, whether it's a formula, graph, or diagram or something like that, that is typically stuff that will be brought up again later during an exam or assignment. So it's important that you get whatever they write down in your notes as well. When it comes to your textbook and making sure you're getting the most out of it, try and read ahead before any lecture or before the instructor deals with the material. That way it'll make it easier to understand what the instructor is talking about if you're kind of familiar with the material already. When reading the textbook, look at the headings, keywords, and summaries. That'll kind of give you a good idea of what the key material is, and you can focus more on that. Underline or highlight important passages, and don't be afraid to make your own notes in the margins or in a notebook as you read along. And if you're somebody who learns better by hearing, try reading it out to yourself. That might make it easier for you to absorb rather than just focusing on the words alone. In order to try and see if you understand the material, test yourself. If you've got definitions, make flip cards or ask yourself questions to see if you understand the material. And if the textbook has practice questions at the end of the chapter, do those because that'll give you a good understanding if you can answer those questions, whether you've captured the material properly or whether you maybe need to go back and review or ask some more questions of your instructor. In order to be successful as a student, it's really important that you stay organized and manage your time. Some of the biggest battles you can have are going to be just making sure you've got everything done on time and you're not being overloaded right at the end of the semester. So I always suggest using a calendar or day timer to keep track of everything, and probably only use one rather than having one for school and one for home or something like that. I always suggest using putting everything on one calendar. That way you can see if there's things overlapping or you're going to run into a bunch of things on one day. If you know that ahead of time, then you can sort of deal with it and try and get things moved around so you can actually get everything done. I suggest too making a consistent study time and stick to it. It's not like you have to study for 2 hours every day or anything like that necessarily, but it can definitely be helpful to be studying for half an hour or 45 minutes every day. Um, if you do that, chances are you're going to need to cram less at the end of the semester. Uh, and don't take on too many responsibilities. As I said previously, sometimes you're going to have to say no. And schedule time for relaxation and fun, time with friends and family. You can't necessarily get through the semester without maintaining some good social connections. So especially in this pandemic age where things seem to be a little more stressful, make sure you're leaving some time to be in touch with people you care about. That way you can get some extra support and your school experience will go just a little bit better. A lot of students report struggling with things like procrastination or leaving things till the last minute. Um, I always suggest not to do so. It can definitely make the end of the semester more stressful if you're trying to cram everything right in at the end. It's important to remember that not everything you learn in school is going to be fun or exciting. So if there's a subject or part of the class that isn't, necessarily your favorite thing to do, don't leave that to the end. It can kind of create extra stress. Try and tackle that, in good time. Don't wait for motivation. Get started anyway. Sometimes people say, they don't want to do something because they don't feel like it. If you can teach yourself how to get started on things, by starting small and focusing on easy tasks to get the ball rolling, eventually you'll be more successful in the long run. And if you've got big assignments to do, break them down into smaller sections and tackle them one at a time. Don't necessarily sit down and try and say, I'm going to finish this whole assignment in one shot. Maybe just start with some of the, smaller sections and build it up from there. That way it makes it more easy to get the entire project done, over the course of a couple weeks rather than try and jam it in a day or two. Pretty much every program these days has some form of group work involved in it, even in situations where you're doing primarily online learning. There's usually some group projects that you have to do. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. When it comes to being in a group, if you haven't done a lot of work with other people in the past, it can be challenging to sort of tackle that new way of learning. So what I say is to be prepared to communicate and be a good listener. Listen to what your other group project mates have, their ideas, that sort of thing, rather than try and necessarily just do things your way. Listen to what they're saying and listen to their ideas and try and incorporate them. If you're in a group project, you definitely have to be expected to contribute and do your part. But remember, not everyone will do the exact same amount of work based on, everybody's situation. Some people might have a little more to do in the project and some a little bit less. But as long as everybody is contributing something, the group project should hopefully be a success. And remember the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. If things aren't going your way, or things aren't going, if you think things aren't being done correctly, and you need to talk to somebody about it, remember to be kind and show respect to try and get your point across. Given the nature of what learning is like these days with COVID, lots of students are being forced to learn from home or do more online learning. So I thought I'd take a minute and talk about what that looks like. Typically this means when you're working from home, you should dedicate a workspace to learning or working and get rid of any distractions. Make sure it's not in a place where you can easily do things like watch TV or that sort of thing. If you've got kids around, maybe try and get them set up doing something before you start with your studies. Again, organizing your time and sticking to a schedule. If you're not having to be in class every day, it's even more important to make sure that you're following some sort of routine. Otherwise, it can be easy to procrastinate and fall behind. Um, when you're learning online, make sure you stay in touch with the instructor and classmates to make sure that you're not missing anything. And try and find out what your learning style is. Some people do okay by reading and learning that way. Other people need to do more visual learning or auditory learning. So if you know your learning style is like that, you might want to invest more time in watching videos or connecting with your instructor and talking through things. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions. Just because you're learning online doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do it all on your own. Check in with your instructor and ask them questions if there are things that you don't understand. In order to get the most out of your learning experience, you want to make sure you're taking care of your physical and mental health as well. Taking care of yourself, eating healthy meals, focusing on good foods like fruits and vegetables will give you sort of the fuel you need to get through the day and make sure you're not running out of energy while you're still trying to be studying and working. Try and get enough sleep. For most people, that's 7 or 8 hours a night. I know if you've got young children at home, it can be a little more difficult, but making sure you're getting enough rest every night can be important to make sure you've got the energy to get through the day. Try and make physical activity a part of your day as well. If you can walk to school or take a half-hour walk every day, physical activity rejuvenates your mind, makes you more alert, and makes you more ready to learn. And as I've said before, make sure you've got time to relax and have some enjoyable activities every day in order to give yourself that mental break so you're more focused when you are learning and studying. At SIIT, there are lots of different services available to help you with your learning if you're getting stuck. If you're having difficulty with class material, there's definitely resources out there for you. We always suggest reaching out to your instructor first. They're typically, especially when it comes to class material, they're typically the ones who are best suited to help you. And if they aren't able to, typically they know where to send you. Don't wait to ask for help. Don't wait till it's, the day before final exams before asking for extra help. If you aren't understanding something right away, let your instructor know. That way you can get yourself on track and you won't fall behind. If you need extra help in specific subjects or areas, we have academic coaches and learning specialists who can help you develop your study skills and habits to help you understand and better retain your schoolwork. So there's definitely that support there as well. If you're having difficulties at home and you'd like to talk to somebody, there are elders at each campus. You can talk to myself or another counselor or connect to resources in the community. There's lots of help out there. If you have something in mind and need help connecting, let somebody at SIIT know and they'll point you in the right direction. And remember that all conversations are confidential, so what you tell somebody at SIIT isn't going to leave the building. We can help connect you with the resources in the community you need. So thank you for joining me and taking some time out of your day to review this material. Hopefully you've learned something that you can incorporate into your practice for the year and you're able to get as much as possible out of your learning experience. We're happy to have you here at SIIT and look forward to helping you achieve your educational goals and moving on into the future. Take care.